Snow was falling softly, the way it always did beyond the wall. Everything was quiet except the distant howl of a wolf, maybe ghost, still watching from the shadows. Jon Snow stood at the edge of the camp, watching the flickering fires of the free folk, the Wildlings. He had chosen this life, not the life of a king, not the throne, not the war, just freedom. It had been months since he had left Castle Black for the last time. After killing Daenerys, Jon had expected death or chains, but instead he was sent back to the Night's Watch, a punishment that no longer had any meaning, as there was no watch left. The world had moved on. The walls stood, but barely. Jon didn't look back. He had walked with the Wildlings deeper into the land he had once sworn to guard. Tormund Giantsbane had welcomed him like a brother, and the Wildlings, though cautious, had accepted him. Not as a lord, not as a bastard, not as a threat, just Jon. Now he lived among them. He slept under firs, hunted in the snow, and listened to stories by the fire. Sometimes he laughed, sometimes he stayed quiet. The pain in his heart from everything he had lost. Ygritte, Daenerys, his family was still there. But out here, it didn't burn as strong. Out here, there was space to breathe. One evening, as the snowstorm calmed, Jon sat with Tormund by the fire. "You ever think about going back?" Tormund asked, tossing a bone into the flames. Jon shook his head. "There's nothing for me there." Tormund nodded. "Aye, just ghosts and cold stones." A few children ran past, giggling, throwing snow at each other. One of them, a small boy with messy red hair, tripped and fell near Jon's feet. Jon helped him up with a small smile. The boy smiled back, not afraid of him, not in awe, just grateful. "You're one of us now, Snow," Tormund said. "Not one of them." Jon didn't reply, but the words settled in his chest like the warmth of fire. Days passed. They followed the herds and searched for safer lands. Jon learned their ways, how to hunt deer, how to track in the snow, how to survive when the ice was cruel. He found peace in the routine, in the silence of the woods, but not everyone liked him. A man named Reich, a large wildling with cold eyes, always kept his distance. He didn't speak to Jon unless necessary, and even then his voice was filled with suspicion. "You may wear furs," he said one night, "but I still see the crow in your eyes." Jon didn't argue. He knew he had to earn their trust, not demand it. One night, a small group went missing during a hunt. The next morning, their frozen bodies were found torn apart, claws, teeth marks, no sign of the animals that did it. "It's happening again," someone whispered. Jon heard the fear, not of wolves or bears, but something worse. He had heard these stories before, creatures that walked in snow, dead things that moved. "We burned the bodies," Jon asked. "No time. We buried them." Jon asked. "No time. We buried them." Jon's heart dropped. He remembered what happened the last time bodies were buried in the snow. He looked at Tormund. "We need to burn them now." But it was already too late. That night, the snow howled like a beast, and something moved in the woods. The howling wind pierced through the camp like a warning. The free folk stayed close to their fires, weapons near, eyes darting to the tree line. Jon stood, sword in hand, eyes sharp. He had felt this before, the stillness in the air, the dread in his gut. It was the same feeling he had felt years ago when the dead marched toward the wall. No one spoke loudly. Even the children were silent, sensing the danger their parents couldn't explain. Jon moved through the camp slowly, checking on the guards, scanning the dark woods. Ghost padded silently beside him, his red eyes glowing like embers in the dark. Then came the first scream. It tore through the silence like a knife, a woman's cry from the far edge of the camp. Jon ran, sword drawn, Ghost beside him. Tormund was already there, putting a bleeding man away from the trees. His face was pale, frozen with horror, his arm missing below the elbow. "They're back," Tormund said in a low voice, breathing hard. "They're dead. I saw them." Jon didn't wait. "Burn the bodies. Now. Dig them up. All of them." "But it's snowing," one man started. "I don't care," Jon snapped. "You either burn them now or fight them tomorrow." He knew what happened if they waited. and he wasn't going to let it happen again. He had made that mistake before. Not this time. By nightfall, flames danced high in the snow as the wildlings burned the frozen corpses of their dead. Smoke curled into the sky. The air smelled of death and ash. Jon stood guard at the edge of camp with a few trusted fighters. Reich stood among them, quiet but alert. Even he, who doubted Jon, had seen enough to be afraid now. "Why are they coming again?" Reich asked, not looking at Jon. Jon tightened his grip on his sword. "Maybe they never left. Maybe we just forgot." The dead had always waited in the shadows, patient, quiet. And with no wall, no watch, no magic protecting the realms of men, they had nothing to stop them now. Suddenly, ghosts growled low. Jon turned. Shapes were moving between the trees. Silent, white, wrong. "Everyone up!" Jon shouted. "They're here!" The camp burst into motion. Fighters grabbed weapons. Mothers clutched children. Fires blazed, lighting the snow in orange light. Then the dead came. They moved fast, bones cracking, eyes glowing blue. Some were half buried in ice, others missing limbs. But they didn't stop. They never did. They were hunger, hatred, and cold wrapped into one. The free folk fought like wolves. Screams, steel, fire, everything echoed in the night. Jon fought beside them, Longclaw flashing in the firelight. Every time he cut one down, another took its place. Then Jon saw him, a white walker, tall, pale, eyes like shattered glass. He moved through the battle without hurry, his blade turning men into corpses with one strike. Jon ran toward him. Their swords clashed ice against Valyrian steel. The sound echoed louder than thunder. They fought like shadows, fast and sharp, Jon breathing hard, each strike more desperate than the last. But something was wrong. The White Walker was not alone. Behind him, others gathered. 5, 6, more than Jon had ever seen at once. They were returning. They were tearing the ice sword and the creature with it. But he staggered back, breath fogging in the freezing air. He looked around. The free folk were falling back. They were losing. "We need to run!" Tormund shouted, blood running down his arm. "This isn't a fight, it's a warning." Jon hesitated. Then he gave the order. "Fall back, everyone north, into the caves." The free folk scattered. Fires were left behind, bodies in the snow. But the living moved fast, guided by fear and survival. As they disappeared into the cold night, Jon looked back one last time. The White Walkers stood at the edge of the camp, watching, not chasing, waiting. "They're not finished," Jon whispered. No, this was just the beginning. Snow kept falling, covering the footprints of the dead and the living alike. The wind had died down, but the fear remained sharp in every heart. The wildlings had taken shelter in the caves of the Frostfangs, ancient tunnels hidden beneath the icy mountains. Few remembered them, but the old ones had whispered of their safety, and now they were the only chance of survival. Inside, the caves were dark, cold, and filled with echoes. Children cried quietly in their mothers' arms, while the men sat with weapons in hand, backs to the stone. The flicker of torches cast long shadows, making the walls seem like they moved. Jon sat alone near the mouth of the cave, staring at the blizzard outside. His hands were scraped, knuckles bruised. Ghost rested at his feet, alert but silent. Tormund came over, sitting beside him. "You should sleep." Jon didn't respond. He just stared ahead. "You think they'll come again?" Tormund asked after a pause. "They didn't come to kill us," Jon said softly. "Not yet." "What then?" Jon looked at him. "They came to remind us that they're watching, that we're not safe anywhere." A heavy silence fell. "We've faced them before, Jon, and we beat them." "No," Jon said. "We didn't beat them. Arya did. Bran did. We barely survived." The truth was harder to face now. Back then, they had had allies, dragons, magic, a full army. Now, just a few wildlings, some old swords, and the snow. In the back of the cave, the people began to whisper. Someone had seen one of the dead near the cave entrance earlier. Another said they heard voices in the walls. Panic was crawling in like cold fingers. That night, Jon walked deeper into the tunnels, searching for a way out, or at least a safer place. The caves were strange. Some paths were collapsed, others led to frozen rivers beneath the mountains. One tunnel led to a wide stone chamber, with carvings on the walls, old runes. He lit a torch and stepped inside. On the walls, strange drawings covered the stone circles, faces, shapes of giants and white-eyed figures. At the center, one image stopped him cold. A man with a wolf beside him, holding a sword against an army of the dead. Was it just a coincidence, or something old as something, written before all this began? He didn't know. "John," a voice called behind him. It was Reich. "They're fighting over food," he said, annoyed. "Your people." John sighed. "They're your people too." Reich stepped closer, frowning. "I didn't ask for you to lead us. I never asked for it either," John replied, tired. "But they follow you." John replied, tired. "But they follow you." John looked at him. "Because they're scared. I'm not their leader. I'm just the one who's seen this before." Reich didn't speak for a while. Then he looked at the carvings on the wall. "You think it's real?" he asked. "I don't know, but I think this has happened before. Maybe many times." Reich stared at the figure of the man with the wolf. "Then maybe this time we don't die running." Suddenly a shout echoed through the tunnels. John and Reich ran back toward the camp. A girl had gone missing, one of the small ones. Her mother was screaming, clutching an old cloth she had been sleeping with. "She was just here," the mother cried. "Just here." John felt the air shift. "Ghost," growled low again. He grabbed a torch. "Stay here," he told the others. "No one leaves this chamber." Reich followed without question. They moved quickly down one of the dark side tunnels. The walls felt tighter here, colder. Then they heard it, a whisper. Not words, just a soft sound like something being dragged. They turned a corner and stopped. The girl stood in the middle of the tunnel, her eyes wide, lips blue. Behind her, from the shadows, something moved. John stepped forward slowly. "Come here, little one. Come to me." But she didn't move. Then she smiled. Her eyes turned ice blue. The little girl's smile was all wrong. It wasn't innocent. It was empty, cold, the kind of smile that doesn't belong on a child's face. Her eyes glowed like frozen stars, locked on John as if she remembered him from another life. "John," Reich whispered, his voice shaking. "She's turned." Teeth. His hand tightened around the torch, while the other slowly reached for his sword. "Don't spook her. Don't spook her." "But she's not." "She's dead, John." John nodded once. "I know." The girl tilted her head, curious, like a predator watching prey try to run. Then, without a sound, her body twitched unnaturally, arms bending wrong, head snapping side to side, and she charged. Reich raised his axe, but John was faster. In one clean motion, long claw sliced through the air, and the girl collapsed at his feet, motionless again. Silence returned, but it wasn't peace. Reich stared at the body, face pale. "They can turn children now." John wiped his blade on the snow. "They always could. We just never lived long enough to see it." They burned the body in the tunnel. No prayers, no last words, just fire. John didn't have space left in his heart for sorrow. Not now. Back in the cave, the mood had shifted. The girl's mother was weeping, and others sat in fear, whispering of cursed lands, angry gods, and walking shadows. John stood before them all, feeling the weight of eyes and expectation. "They're hunting us," he said plainly. "Not just killing, hunting, testing." An old woman rose from the crowd. Her face was covered in wrinkles, her voice soft like cracked ice. "This place is not safe. The dead don't walk into our caves unless something draws them in." Tormund spoke up. "You saying John brought this?" "No," the woman said. "I'm saying something old is waking up, and maybe it started with him." John's face darkened. He had been cursed with burdens since birth. Bastard of Ned Stark, brother of the Night's Watch, slayer of Daenerys. And now, a spark for something ancient. He left the group and returned to the chamber with the carvings. He stared at the figure of the man and the wolf. That wasn't just any man. It looked like him. Reich followed silently. "I think we need to stop running." John looked at him. "And do what? Fight? With what army?" Reich's voice was steady. "Maybe we don't need an army, just enough to hit them first." Hit back. John considered this. For years, the living had waited for the dead to come. They had watched, prayed, prepared, then panicked. But what if, this time, they struck first? He nodded slowly. We gather fighters, the strongest, the fastest. Small group. We go south toward the ruins of the wall. We find out how deep this goes. Tormund joined them then, overhearing. You're going back to the ruins. Jon turned. If they're coming from somewhere, I need to see it with my own eyes. Reich smirked. You always run toward the storm, don't you? You always run toward the storm, don't you? Jon gave him a look. The storm's already here. By morning, a party of 9 was ready. Jon, Tormund, Reich, and 6 others, hunters, trackers, fighters who had nothing left to lose. Ghost walked at Jon's side, as always. Before leaving, Jon gave instructions to the rest. If we don't return in 3 days, take the others and head west. Keep moving. Never stay in one place too long. The old woman nodded. And if the dead follow, Jon looked back once, eyes hard. Then burn everything behind you. With that, they left the caves and walked into the blizzard. The journey south was brutal. Winds cut across their faces like knives, and the snow hid deep cracks in the ground. More than once, someone almost fell, but they kept moving, driven by a quiet desperation. And after 2 days, they reached it. What remained of the wall, or what should have been the wall, because now it was gone, not broken, not fallen, just vanished. The wall was gone, not shattered, not melted, not even burned. It was as if the ancient ice had been swallowed by the sky itself. No rubble, no trace, just emptiness. The line where it had once stood looked like the edge of the world, nothing but frozen silence stretching into forever. Jon stepped forward slowly, heart heavy with dread. The wall had stood for thousands of years, a symbol of protection, of warning, and now it had disappeared without a sound. Tormund cursed under his breath. By the gods, what did this? Reich knelt and touched the earth. The snow's too even. This isn't damage, this is something else, like the wall was pulled away. Jon looked around. The wind was stronger here, but colder in a different way. Not natural, the kind of cold that didn't just freeze. Flesh, it sank into your bones, into your soul. Ghost growled low and paced along the invisible line, sniffing the ground like something had passed this way. Something powerful. We should go back, one of the younger men said. Tell the others. This isn't right. No, Jon said firmly. Not yet. Tormund raised an eyebrow. What are you hoping to find? A trail of dead men marching? I don't know, Jon muttered, but I need to understand what we're facing. They moved forward, stepping into the land that had once been beyond the wall. But it felt different now. There were no birds. There were no birds. Not even the howl of wolves. Just dead quiet. Hours passed. Then they saw it. File of bones. The remains of one of the old ones, curled on its side like it had tried to crawl away before death took it. The skull was cracked, split clean down the middle. Giants don't go down easy, Tormund said, lowering his voice. What could have done that? Jon knelt, studying the wounds. The cut was precise, clean too clean. Not wild, not beast. It looked like it had been harvested. Suddenly, a scream tore through the quiet. They turned. One of the men from their group, Yak, was missing. Where is he? Jon shouted, already running toward where the scream had come from. They found him a few seconds later, lying face up in the snow. No blood, no wounds. Eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Dead. And something was carved into his chest, a circle, with a line through it. Jon's breath caught in his throat. I've seen that before, he said. Tormund looked at it. What is it? It's their mark. The White Walkers. Reich stared at the body. They're watching us. No, Jon said quietly. They're watching us. No, Jon said quietly. They're warning us. That night, they made a fire in a shallow cave and posted double guards. No one slept. Every shadow felt alive, every gust of wind like a whisper in the dark. Jon sat apart from the others, staring at the snowflakes landing on his glove. They melted, slowly, unnaturally slow, like the cold was too deep to touch. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her, Ygritte, standing by the trees, hair red as flame, skin pale as snow, wearing the same furs she wore the night she died. Jon stood, heart thudding. Egret. She didn't move, didn't blink. Then she smiled, and her eyes turned blue. Didn't blink. Then she smiled, and her eyes turned blue. Jon drew his sword instantly. Ghost snarled and stood between them. But when he blinked, she was gone. Only snow remained. He backed away slowly, breathing hard. This wasn't just war anymore. This was something older, something deeper. They weren't just raising the dead. They were reaching into memories, taking faces, playing games. Jon returned to the group, pale and shaking. "They're in our heads now," he said. "They're getting stronger." Tormund stared at him. Then we're out of time." Jon nodded. "Tomorrow we go to the old tree, the one the children of the forest used. There might be something left." Reich frowned. "Magic? Knowledge," Jon said. "Or a weapon, or maybe just a way to survive." Because right now, Jon Snow didn't feel like a warrior. He felt like a man standing on the edge of the world, staring into a darkness that remembered his name. By dawn, the cold had changed. It wasn't just biting anymore. It was alive. The snowflakes fell slower, thicker, like the sky itself was suffocating the land. Every step toward the heart tree felt like marching through something ancient and angry. Jon led in silence, his eyes scanning the horizon, hand never far from Longclaw. Ghost moved ahead like a shadow, teeth bared, his white fur nearly invisible in the endless snow. Behind, the others followed, tense and quiet. No one spoke of what they saw last night. Not the girl, not Yark, not Egret's face. But it lived in all their eyes now. They were being hunted, not just in the body, but in the mind. The journey to the heart tree took most of the day. It stood twisted and gnarled in the middle of a sunken clearing, its bark white as bone, its red leaves like dripping blood. The face carved into its trunk watched them approach with the stillness of something that had seen too much. Jon stepped forward and placed his hand on the bark. The cold vanished instantly. He blinked, and the world shifted. Suddenly, he wasn't in the snow anymore. He stood in the same forest, but warmer, brighter. The tree was blooming, green and alive, and beside it stood Bran, not the boy he once knew. This was the three-eyed raven, calm, distant, ancient. "Jon," Bran said, "you shouldn't have come here." Jon swallowed. "I had no choice. The past is stronger in this place. It remembers too much." "I don't care about the past," Jon said. "I need to know what's coming." Bran's expression didn't change. "They've awakened the old night, Jon. The White Walkers were just the beginning. Tools, pawns. The real thing, it's beneath the frost. Waiting, feeding off fear, memory, pain." "What is it?" Jon asked. "What do they want?" "They want to erase us," Bran said. "Not just kill us. Wipe our stories, our names, our memories. All of it. So it's like we never existed." Jon's blood went cold. Bran stepped closer. "You were chosen once, by fire. Now you're being hunted by ice. The North remembers, Jon, but so does the Dark, and it wants you most of all." "Why me?" Jon demanded. "Because you carry both," Bran said. "Fire and ice, life and death, the balance between all things." Jon's breath caught in his throat. "How do I stop it?" Bran's voice turned distant. "You must go beyond the old land, where the light never touches, where no man walks. And what will I find there?" Bran didn't answer. He simply looked away, and then the world cracked. The snow returned. The cold stabbed Jon's lungs, and he stumbled back from the tree, gasping. The others rushed to him. "You all right?" Tormund asked, grabbing his shoulder. Jon nodded slowly. "I saw Bran." Reich frowned. "Bran Stark. I thought he disappeared." "He didn't disappear," Jon said. "He became something else. He's still watching." "And what did he say?" "That this." Jon paused, eyes searching the horizon. "This isn't a war of swords anymore. It's a war of stories. They're trying to erase us." Everyone was silent. Tormund grunted. "That's madness." "No," Jon said. "It's worse than madness. It's Rue." Suddenly, the ground shook just a little. A low rumble like thunder buried deep beneath the snow. Then came the sound. Clink, clink, clink. not footsteps, chains. They turned toward the noise. Shapes emerged from the tree line, half seen, slow, massive. 1, 2, 5, more. But these weren't white walkers, they were giants. Dead ones, covered in frost and chains, eyes glowing blue, pulled forward like slaves. And behind them, walking slowly, was something none of them had ever seen before. A tall figure draped in black ice, its face hidden by a helm made of bone and shadow. Its hands long, sharp as blades. Its presence sucked the heat from the air. Jon knew, without doubt, this was their true enemy. Not a walker, not a white. The first death. A forgotten king of the cold, buried for centuries beneath the wall. Now free. The creature raised its hand and the ground behind it split open. From the chasm came the wailing of the damned. The wailing from the chasm was not just sound, was suffering. It clawed at their minds like icy fingers dragging across bone. Even the strongest among them staggered, hands to ears, gasping as if the cold was crawling into their skulls. Jon gritted his teeth and forced himself to look. The first death didn't move fast. It didn't need to. Its presence alone shattered the world around it. Where it stepped, frost cracked through stone. Trees died. Light faded. The chain-dead giants behind it groaned, their blue eyes burning like twin moons. "What the hell is that?" Reich whispered, voice shaking. Jon stepped forward, sword drawn, the one behind it all. Tormund's hand trembled on his axe. "How do we fight that?" "We don't," Jon said. "Not like this." The first death lifted its head, and for the first time it spoke. Not in words, but in something worse. A voice that echoed inside the mind, ancient and emotionless. "The living forget, the dead remember. All warmth ends. All stories end. You are the last chapter." Jon's grip tightened on Longclaw. Not today. Then the earth exploded. Whites burst from the ground around them, dozens, maybe hundreds. The snow itself betrayed them, rising in twisted forms with blades of ice and jagged teeth. Jon and his group were surrounded. "Circle up," Jon shouted. They fought like animals backed into a corner. Jon moved with fury, Longclaw slicing through dead flesh. Ghost tore into whites, bloodless chunks flying. Reich stood shoulder to shoulder with Tormund, cutting down 3 with one swing. But it wasn't enough. One by one, they began to fall. 2 wildlings were dragged down screaming, buried beneath icy claws. A third had his throat ripped open before he could shout. Still, Jon fought. Not to win, but to give the others time. Behind him, Reich was bleeding from a dozen cuts, barely standing. "We can't hold them," he yelled. Jon looked toward the heart tree, the face carved into the bark. It was crying, not water, not blood. Something older, memory. Jon ran. "Fall back," he screamed. "To the tree." They sprinted, dodging the dead, Ghost leaping beside them, biting and snapping. The first death watched them go but didn't follow. It simply raised a hand. The wailing stopped, and suddenly the silence was worse. Jon reached the tree first and dropped to his knees, placing both hands on the bark. "Do something," he whispered. "Anything." The wind stopped, time slowed, and from the depths of the old magic, the heart tree responded. The face in the bark moved. Its eyes opened, and from the tree's roots, a blinding light exploded upward like fire through snow. A blast of raw memory. Whites screamed as the light hit them, catching fire not from heat, but from truth. Every face they had stolen, every story they had tried to erase, came rushing back. Names carved into the air. Mothers, warriors, lost children, old kings, forgotten wolves. The dead burned in memory. And the first death staggered. It hissed and raised its arm to block the light, but it was wounded. Not destroyed, but exposed. It felt pain. Jon stood slowly, light reflecting in his eyes. Behind him, Tormund and Reich were breathing hard, covered in blood but alive. The field was covered in ash, but the first death still stood. It turned slowly and vanished into the storm, taking its giants and shadows with it, retreating, not beaten, but shaken, for now. Later that night, they buried their dead. Only 5 had survived the battle. Half the wildlings Jon had brought were gone. Tormund looked at him grimly. "So, what now?" John stared into the flames. Now we go back. And then, John didn't answer right away. Finally he said, we gather everyone, free folk Northmen, what's left of the watch, and we tell them the truth. Reich scoffed. They won't believe it. They will, John said, when they see what's coming. Ghost sat beside him, eyes glowing in the firelight. The snow kept falling, but now John knew. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was war. Not for thrones, not for crowns, but for memory, for names, for every story the cold had tried to erase. And Jon Snow had one more story to tell. Boo!